Sonny, prayer please.
Pray, God and Father, we thank you so much for this time to come together to study your word. We pray that we'll study it in a way that you would have us to, that we'll come out with the truth about the word. We pray that we'll apply it to our lives. Be with the ones that aren't here, that are home watching, and the ones that are sick and maybe not able to. We ask that you forgive us of our sins and be with us through this service. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay. All right, so in our lesson this morning, I was debating on which direction to go with the sermon and the Bible class, because I have the last lesson for the series we've been doing on peace, perfect peace, and I have that I want to finish up because there's some other things we want to begin moving into. But being that it's Mother's Day, I also want to take this time to honor and recognize mothers and approach it from a biblical perspective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the Bible class on mothers, and then I'll do the sermon on the finishing up the perfect peace, and because that's the series we've been preaching in the morning anyway. So we're going to talk about the worth of a mother, and try to help us understand. I believe when you look at again, just going back to this whole COVID-19 thing, I don't mean to undermine the seriousness of it, but hopefully people are getting a better appreciation. Children are having a better appreciation of just exactly what it is that their mothers do, right? Because they're around their mothers quite a bit and now more than ever, and so, and I'm sure it can be tumultuous in some situations where it's being very difficult. I told you about that video where the lady was saying, someone needs to come and check on us because she was about to go crazy with her kids. She's down there on her computer trying to do work for her job, and her kids are upstairs, making a swing out of a sheet between two beds, and the youngest one's fallen to the floor, and she's like, we don't have a swing up there. What's that noise? She just heard this crashing on the ceiling, and it was the youngest one that they put in a swing they made. And it's hilarious how she just keeps saying, somebody needs to come and check on us, as if I need help. So, hopefully during this time, we take more time to think about things like that, right? On my lesson on Wednesday, one of the things I brought up is that single word. What if you had one word to describe this experience that we've been going through? What would it be? And mine was appreciation. Learning to appreciate things more than you had in the past. And I believe everybody, whether that may be the word they use or not, is experiencing that or can understand that, because the things that you would just not necessarily took for granted, but it's just normal life, right? You just go to the store whenever you want, get what you want off the shelf, and go back home, and you never worried about, nobody walked through the place with gloves or masks, right? And then you keep hearing these things about, the new normal, and I'm like, why would that be the new normal, and why would you keep going that way with stuff? But so there's just things like that. I heard the other day, or read today that the other day in Massachusetts, a ice cream parlor opened up, and they closed within one day because the people were mistreating the employees. I guess because everybody must have rushed to go get their ice cream. Apparently they hadn't had in months, so they rushed, and it was taking too long, and the employees were trying to keep up with the number of people, and the patrons were abusing the staff. And so the owner said, we're shutting it back down again. We're not going to do that. And again, I think that shows the frustration and reminds us of the appreciation of just being able to go there and not have that experience, right? Where the employees maybe every once in a while get some patron yelling at them because they're not getting their Rocky Road or whatever they wanted quick enough, but not a crowd, a mob, all upset because they're not getting their ice cream. Which I think says a lot about the people that are there, that they're willing to abuse the staff because they can't have ice cream. So when it comes to mothers during this time, maybe we spent more time calling our moms, talking to our moms. Certainly, some people have been around their mothers more. And maybe there's an awareness of your mother more now than in the past simply because of the concern, right? More aware that if you have elderly parents, how this could affect them. I think one of the saddest situations that I've heard about regarding this whole pandemic is the people that were in the nursing homes in some of these states, and family members were not even allowed to go and visit, right? And in the time period of when this happened, those family members passed away. And I was reading an article the other day where they were talking about how family members didn't even get to, when the last time they saw their mother or their father, they were in good health, relatively speaking. And the next thing they hear, they're dead. And one of the situations for these people that strikes you in the heart is that they never got to even say goodbye because they couldn't even go to the facilities, right? Let alone just kind of stand outside the window and wait. They couldn't do that. So, and maybe because some of them became sick and were on ventilators, you couldn't call them. Well, you could always call. But maybe that was not a possibility either because of the medical care they were getting. So, I think there's a lot of people out there maybe who are more aware and thinking more about family. And I think that would just be an obvious outcome of this, right? Have you guys been thinking more about your family? And right. Well, I mean, what would be at least one thing that you would think more about your family? Because like, nah, we don't care. What is one thing that you think more about your family during this time?
They're lost.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah, but you think about that always anyway. That's there.
But more with the COVID-19 because there's more danger.
Okay, thank you. Right. So Ken is saying because there's more possibility of someone becoming infected and actually dying from this, if they are not a child of God, that weighs more heavy on you, right? I mean, it always weighs heavy on you anyway when you have family members that are not Christians. But even more so when there is a possibility of your opportunities to share the gospel with them being taken away because all of a sudden they contracted COVID-19 and their life was lost. So that puts us, and I think that's one of the things is that we would. How do I need something I can rub my face with that's not my hand, a stick. So I think that one of the things that we do is we think more about our family just simply because of the possibility of someone getting sick. And we know of people with the Harpers, with their grandson, that he contracted it. And so, that certainly was something that would be on their mind, thinking more. And then his other grandfather was with him at the time, so there's a possibility maybe he gets it. And so I'm just saying that I think that for us, because of this event, there may be a heightened awareness of thinking about family members, and mothers are part of that, right? Mothers are part of that. Thinking about, and if you consider the fact that maybe your mother's on her own, she's in some location by herself, maybe in her own house somewhere, and you're in another state and you're not readily available just to go visit or whatever it is, there may be some concerns about that as well. So I think what I'm trying to get at is that the worry that we have for somebody demonstrates something. The worry that we have for people demonstrates a value that we place on them, right? And if you're worried about somebody, it's because you see some value in them. And it doesn't have to be a family member. We worry about maybe friends that we work with and neighbors, whatever it may be. We worry about them. We worry about their souls, right? We're our Christian family. Right? And all that goes back to because there's a value that we place in them. Now, if you say a Christian family, you say, well, yeah, but we know that as Christians, that if anything happens to us, that we still have that hope of eternal bliss with the Father, the blessings that come with that. But you still place a value in their friendship. You place a value in just spending time with them, missing them, right? So the longing that we have for something or the concern we have for something is connected by the value we place in something. If there's something that you don't place high value in, then you don't worry about it that much. Have you ever, let me just give you an illustration. Have you ever been unloading your vehicle and you have some groceries back there and you have to go into the house and come back out and you leave your trunk open? Has anybody ever thought, man, I hope somebody doesn't come by and take that out of my trunk while I'm doing this? I've thought about that before. I've left stuff in the back of my truck in my driveway, and overnight I'm wondering, man, I hope somebody doesn't just go take that. Because somebody can walk by and look at the back of the truck and go, hey, and just, take your tool bag out of it. You go to Home Depot, you've been working on a job, you got your tools. Rick, you've done this before. And, why do you lock your vehicle? Well, I'm worried about somebody getting in. So the value, now, if I don't have anything in the back of my truck, I don't go to bed worrying that someone's going to steal something out of the back of my truck or if I have garbage in there, let's say I just got a bunch of scraps I'm going to throw away and I go, oh man, I hope nobody takes that. I hope somebody does take it. So I don't worry because there's no value in that to me, so I don't worry about that. So our worry lines up with the value that we place on something. That's why when we have something of great value, we lock it away, right? I mean, I'm not talking about your family member. I love you so much, I'm going to lock you in a room. It's if you have something of high value, an antique or a family heirloom, you have safety deposit box you put it in. So that way it doesn't get stolen, right? Or you have a safe at your house. Why? Because you place a higher value on it, so you actually will go out and buy a safe to put that in there because it's more valuable than maybe the other stuff you have in your house. So that same thought carries over to family members, and that applies to our lesson. The value, the worth of our mothers. The worth of our mothers. So, if we look at and consider Jesus, and we're not told a lot about his relationship with his mother. We're given very just sparse information, just little scenes, as it were. But in some of those scenes, we do see that he saw worth in Mary being his mother. In fact, I think one of the greatest testimonies to the worth that he saw in his mother is what he did on the cross. Right? So when Jesus is dying on the cross, what was the comment that he made? Because he references Mary as he's on the cross. What is that comment that he makes? Do you remember?
Yeah, he wanted John to take care of it.
Okay. So take a look over in the Gospel of John, chapter 19. So he, as Ken said, he gives John the command to take care of his mother. John chapter 19. And we're going to read verses 25 through 27. Therefore the soldiers did these things, but standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus then saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, Woman, behold your son. Then he said to the disciple, Behold your mother. From that hour, the disciple took her into his own household. Now, I think there's two ways that we see the worth and the value that Jesus placed on his mother. Right? He didn't just say, well, the Father's going to take care of you. Don't worry about it, Mary. You'll be fine. He actually gives charge for the care of his mother to an individual. And as he's on the cross and dying. So think about that. In the throes of death, when you're there, one of the last things on his mind is his mother. He's thinking about her. And I think the value, so one, the fact that he calls out an individual to care for her shows the worth that he saw in his mother. And certainly you say, well, that's also his love. Yes, but he saw value in her. Secondly, it's whom he chose to do it, right? So when he's on the cross, I don't think it was just accident. He looks out there and he just sees John's the only one there, and he goes, okay, I got nobody else going to pick you. Because John records the one whom he loved. So Jesus picked someone in particular, and it was someone whom he had a deep affection for to take care of his mother. So he didn't just choose anybody. He chose someone in particular. So I think in those two instances, we see someone, we see Jesus placing a high value on his mother. So let's ask you the question. If it was your turn and you had to have someone take care of your mother, whom would you choose? Right? Whom would you choose to put in charge of taking care of your mother? Go ahead, Ken.
He did not have to make that statement. He had brothers there that would have.
Yeah.
Would normally, so he chose somebody that was going to be a Christian.
Right.
And secondly, an apostle who was had great love, that would, care for this woman above what he thought his brothers might do. So,
I think that's a great point, because in his selecting it, it's not just a financial thing, right? Oh, you've got more money.
no, they had poor brothers.
Yeah, because it's like, well, who would you choose to take care of your mother? Well, and it's like the family member that's got the most money because they can afford it. Yeah, but what if that family member that's got the most money is never around and is really a despicable person? So I think you're correct in suggesting that he also is picking someone who is a disciple of his, who's faithful to him, who will be faithful to him, and will be sure that this is carried over to his mother, right? That she's not. I mean, let's say that you have an elderly mother who's brought up in the church, and there comes a point where you need someone to assist you in aiding her care. Well, are you going to want to pick someone who has the same mindset in a relationship to God, who's willing to help get your mother to worship services when she's able to go? Or are you going to pick someone who doesn't care about that stuff, who's disassociated with those things? Now look, I know that in a perfect world, it's not always that case, and sometimes we just don't have a choice to do that. But even when we don't have a choice to pick someone who's in line with our family member, our mother, spiritually, we still don't just randomly pick somebody. Let's just flip through the phone book and find a nursing home to stick mom in. Right? We still take the time to go, to investigate, to try to figure out, is this the best place for her to be, right? Why are we doing all that? Because there's a value that we place on our mothers. And we want to be sure that, to the best of our ability, she's going to be taken care of. And I think Jesus certainly demonstrates that. A mother's worth is seen in how her children respond to her. Now, not in and of itself, I'm not saying that alone. If the children don't respond, that must mean she must be of little worth, because she could have horrible children. But certainly, I think with all things considered, when you look at how children respond to their mother, it says something about the value they place on her. There have been mothers in the past who have not been very good mothers. We all understand that, right? There's been mothers who aren't very good mothers. And their children place little value on that mother. You hear stories all the time where mothers were, addicted to drugs or alcohol or whatever it was, and they became pregnant, and they gave up their children, and so the children carry this, this ill will towards their parent because the mother, why didn't you come and find me, or why did you give me up? And so they may not place a high value on her because they did that, but they may not know the entire situation of what happened. And then if they're in a home where they've been adopted, they would show a greater appreciation for a good mother that adopted them and took care of them and showed love to them. So when you take a look at a mother's worth, I believe we can see the value of a mother in how her children respond to her. So let me just give you a couple of things here to consider when it comes to a demonstration of how a child would demonstrate, how we would demonstrate the worth or the value we place on our mother, right? Okay, take a look over in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 1. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 1. So, Paul, writing concerning the family, and this is a family situation here, says this about the children. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. One way I believe that you can see the worth that a child places on their mother is in their obedience to their mother. Now, of course, he says parents, and that's father and mother, but we're talking about mothers today. When a child is willing to listen to the mother, obey the mother, I believe that's a demonstration of the value that the child places on the mother. And I believe even more so as time goes on, right? So in your younger years, your mother tells you to do something. There is this innocent trust. She's mom. She wouldn't ask me to do anything that's harmful for me. She must be asking me or telling me to do something that is good for me. And you may be fussing with it and fighting with it at times. But typically you listen and you honor your mother through that. You obey. Because to some degree, whatever minute it may be, you're showing value in what she's doing. You're trusting in her. But as time goes on, when you get out there and you're making your own decisions, and you go to your mother and you as a daughter are telling your mother about this guy that you met, and your mother is saying, he is not good for you. I know how you feel about him, but I'm telling you, the things that I know, the things that I've seen, maybe the things that you're not seeing, he just doesn't seem to be a good man for you. And when the daughter takes the time to slow things down and listen, and then makes the determination not to be with that guy, is that child, that young lady, is she not showing that she values her mother and her mother's opinion, her mother's decisions in those situations? She would be willing to listen to mother and obey. Now, of course, the mother's not telling her you can't be with the guy. But it shows that when we are willing to listen to our parents, it places some value on their years, their wisdom, their experiences, our trust of them because of who they are. We know that they've been there for us. They've guided us. They've comforted us. So certainly in obedience, I believe we can demonstrate the value of our mother as we listen to him. In Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 8, Solomon counsels his son. He says, do not forsake the law of your mother. Listen to her. Listen to what your mother is teaching you. Now again, all things considered, let's not be thinking, well, what if you got a bad mother, right? Okay, does that even have to be addressed? If you got a bad mother telling you to go rob that liquor store, okay, that's not. We're talking about mothers who are trying to guide their children in a right way to the best of their ability, and certainly help them to be better citizens, better Christians, and so there's value in that. Mothers are also, the children also display the value they place on a mother by their respect. Have you ever seen a child disrespect their mother? Man, talk back in ugly ways. You know, you can go on any of these old talk shows they have, that Dr. Phil or whatever they are, and you'll see these girls get on there and just badmouth the mother and just call her all kinds of filthy names, and just, it's unbelievable. And granted, maybe the mother is just not a very good mother, and then this girl has animosity towards you because she feels like she's been, raised in such a poor way, and she has so much anger because of all this stuff, whatever. But when there is a lack of respect for a mother, it shows a lack of value in that mother. But when there is a high respect for that mother, then I believe that the child is showing value. I respect her because she brought you into this world. Well, yes, she's my mother, but a lot of women can bring a child into this world and not be good mothers. I respect her because not only did she bring me into this world, but she took care of me. She guided me. She taught me. She comforted me. She was there for me in my difficult times. And so I respect that. And in that respect, it's demonstrated in how a daughter addresses her mother. How things that she won't say because that's not how you talk about your mom. Why would I ever talk about my mom that way? That's not the kind of person that she was. And you often hear where people will have a greater respect for their mothers when a mother brings a child in the world in very adverse situations. I was single, I became pregnant, there was no man, everybody's telling me, abort your child, kill that kid. And my mother decided that she was going to keep me and raise me. Even though she was young, even though it was going to be difficult on her, you certainly can see a greater level of respect that somebody may have, or a different kind of respect, I guess, that somebody may have in a situation like that, where a mother is in very, very difficult situations, but she continues to take care of her kids and raise those children. Over in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 2, here Paul writes, honor your father and your mother. Honor them, which is the first commandment with promise, right? Honor your father and mother, so that it may be well with you, and that you may live long on the earth. The idea of honor is the idea of showing respect for your mother. And certainly when we take the time to call our mothers, take the time to listen to them, take the time to tell them how we care about them, respect them, that we are aware of it, as they get older, right? You don't rush the conversation. You're respectful, and you know that it may take mom a little while to get out the story or to tell me something, and I'm like, come on, I gotta go. Let's get out of here. Come on, mom, you just take way too long on this story, right? I've heard people in conversations with their mothers that are just, to me, just like, wow, why would you say that? Why would you talk like that to your mother? Do you not respect her? Mothers can also be shown value, or value is demonstrated for a mother by a child through affection. When you go back and you take a look at the idea of telling a mother that you love her, giving your mother a hug, a kiss, giving gifts, showing affection. Well, do you just do that to everybody? There's a particular value that you place on your mother. And in that, affection can be shown for something. I know sometimes we use that word affection for inanimate objects, right? You must really love your boat because, you got it. You take better care of your boat than you do your wife, right? People have done things like that where it's a sense of saying there's an affection for something. Well, but that idea is there, right? That when you show affection to someone, it shows a level of value, right? It's the idea of when you choose to get married to someone, it shows a level of value to that person, right? And the same thing for you, the fact that they marry you. When you choose to tell someone that you love them, or when you go up and you give someone a hug or give them a kiss, you're placing a level of value on that person that you don't place on everybody, right? Do you just go out there and give everybody a hug and everybody a kiss? No. So when we show affection towards someone, I believe what we're doing is we're showing a value for that individual. And mothers, when we show our affection towards our mother, I believe that is a demonstration of that. When a child comes in and tells a mother that I love you, right? And I know actions speak more than words. We've already talked about obedience. That's already there. But when the child is saying that to the mother, I mean, what would it seem like to you? And maybe some people are brought up without, family ever saying I love you to one another. But what would it seem like to you if a child never talked about loving their mother? It never mentioned that. Did you love your mother? Yeah. Well, I mean, she's all right, I guess. I suppose. I mean, I never had that relationship with my mom. Why? She's your mother. Why don't you have a bond like that with your parent? There should be something there. So again, I believe affection is something that demonstrates the value that we place on someone, and the value of mother is seen in the affection of a child. I think a lot about watching with the kids now with their children. You watch your grandchildren with their parents, and you can see how much your grandson or your granddaughters, how much they love their parents by how they run up and show affection. They're laughing and their mother's holding them, and that bond. So you can see that, right? And it's more than just an animal instinct of dependence upon the mother, right? It's not just that. It's something more than that. It's something deeper than that. And when we look at that, it certainly doesn't make the heart of the mother swell to know that your child has that kind of affection towards you. This love you back, shows that love back to you. As well, when we look at the way that children demonstrate the value that they place on their mother is by willing to listen to their mother's wisdom. If you place a value on your mother and she's giving you insights into something, into anything in life in general, and you're willing to listen to her, I believe what you're doing is you're demonstrating that you see value in her wisdom. You see value in her years. You see value in her as a person, that she's been through these things, she's struggled through these things, she's lived through these things, and now she is sharing that with you. In Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 1, a wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish son is a grief to his mother. Well, he's foolish because he's not listening to the wisdom of his mother. Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 25. Proverbs 17 and verse 25. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her who bore him. So if you have a son or child that is foolish, acting in foolish ways, that son certainly doesn't put any value on the mother's worth, on the mother herself. They'll see no worth in the mother because they're acting in ways that, from what we're reading here in Proverbs, seems to be contrary to what the mother would be teaching. Because if the mother wasn't teaching something opposite of what he was doing, then the child would not be bitterness to him who bore her. If the mother was teaching the kid to be that way, the mother would be proud of the child that they were that way. Yeah, I raised my child, and people are out there, I raised my child to be, looking out for number one, being crooked, getting what you can get when you can get it, not caring about other people. I'm proud that my kid does that. Some people are. Some people are proud that their kids act in unseemly ways. But when it comes to a mother who's trying to raise their child in God's way, a child, and giving that child wisdom and advice, that child doesn't show any value in the mother's wisdom when they're out there acting the fool, doing foolish things. It's a disregard for what the mother has taught them, right? And that's a sad thing. And in fact, mothers, you know this. You know the ache that your children bring to your heart when you know that they're living in ways and doing things that are not according to what you've taught them. What's the expression that we use? You were taught better. You know better. Right? So if you've ever had to deal with a child in your life that has just gone away from the godly living that you've tried to instill within them, the mother doesn't feel good about that. And in fact, what is one of the things the mother will do? The mother will question herself. Where did I go wrong? Didn't I teach you? Yes. You may have been the mother that brought your kid to worship every morning, got him up, got him and her dressed, made them come to worship with you, taught them, made sure that they were taken care of with all the things they wanted to do. But you raised them in the ways of God. You taught them the Word of God. And then years down the road, that child, or maybe even relatively soon in their teen years, is going completely away from the things that you had taught them. That child's not showing value in your wisdom when they're doing that. In fact, they're just disregarding what you've taught them as if it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So we can certainly show a our mothers value when we listen to their wisdom, the advice that they give us, and the direction that they try to guide us in. I'm not saying that every time they tell you something, a mother tells you something, it's not always right. Right? Mothers are fallible as well. But certainly an acknowledgement of it and a desire to hear her is something that demonstrates value. I think another thing that you can look at in regards to the value that a child placed on the mother, demonstrated through the child, is similar to the wisdom, but it's the life that they live after they've left home.
Amen.
Right? So if a child continues to live in the way that they were brought up in God, they're showing value in the things that they were taught when they were in home. They see the value in that. And when you consider that the mother continues to live that way, right? She continues to live the life that she taught her children. And I'm talking in particular about a relationship with God. That a mother chose to walk in the path of God, and she raised her children to walk in that path. And when that child leaves home and that child continues down that path, it certainly shows that the child saw value in what the mother was teaching them. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that the child sees value in the teaching itself, right? The teaching itself is where the value is truly found, but they place value in the mother's guidance because the mother, and I know fathers as well, but we're talking about mothers right now, that the mothers played a role in guiding this child in the ways of God. And so that the righteousness that the mother lived out then is a value to the child as demonstrated in the life that they continue to live faithful to God. Over in Proverbs 23, if you were to, as a mother, and ask this question, as a mother, if there was one thing that you could hope for your children in this life, and you're getting ready to leave this earth, and there's one thing that you hope for them, what is it?
Salvation.
Faithful to God. Faithful to God. You don't care if they're wealthy, right? You don't care if they get married. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not a concern of yours, but the most important thing is whatever you do, whatever life you live, my greatest concern is for your soul, for your salvation. Because if the child is pursuing after that, then the other things with relationships and with jobs and stuff, those things will be handled within the confines of their faith.
That's right.
So, a mother's greatest desire should be for the salvation of her children. And that also becomes one of her greatest regrets when that doesn't happen. One of her greatest sorrows. In Proverbs chapter 23, verses 24 and 25, the father of the righteous will greatly rejoice, and he who sires a wise son will be glad in him. Let your father and your mother be glad, and let her rejoice who gave birth to you. You see, when a child continues down that path of righteousness that the mother has laid out before them, then that brings joy. And I believe that brings the greatest joy to a mother, that their children are faithful. Because that is the eternal in this whole equation. Who they marry, certainly you want them to marry the right woman, the right man. If they want to have children, certainly you want them to have children, and you want to be a grandmother. You want all that stuff. But that which has the eternal consequence to them is their salvation, whether or not they're living faithful to God. You want your children to be financially stable. You don't want them to have to struggle with things like that. But your greatest concern for them is their spiritual well-being. It's always that. And a child shows value in that when they not only follow that path, but then they likewise do the same for their children. If I take from what my mother has taught me and I pass that on to my children, then I'm showing I see value in how I was raised. And I tell you, it is a heartwarming thing when you find families who have generations of Christians, where generations that we continued. It was passed on to our children. And I'm not saying there aren't some outliers out there where a kid every once in a while, they decide to just go off. But as a whole, the family continued to place value in what they were taught all those years ago by this mother and their father, but particularly Mother's Day, Mother Day, and then down the line. So the righteousness of a mother is indispensable, and the child shows value in the righteousness of a mother by living that out in their own life. And then the mother's care. I believe that when we look at how a mother cares for her children, it certainly, a child shows the value of a mother's care when they allow that care to be received. Too many times, children will disregard the care that a mother wants to place upon the child. I don't need your help. I don't need your concern. I don't need your worry. Well, if you didn't need it, the mother's not worried because there's nothing going on, right? Something's got to be happening for her to be concerned about you. And you may not see it, but she does. And I would rather have a mother who cared for me and concerned for me than one who didn't. Who just simply said, whatever, you made your bed, you lie in it. Because if a mother cares for you, then a mother is going to come to you and she's going to help you. She's going to talk with you. She's going to guide you. She's going to be there for you. And so that care, when a child accepts that, then I believe you see the child placing value on his mother. Let me just read one more thing here and then we'll close out with this. In Proverbs chapter 31, right? And everybody is familiar with this. This is the worthy woman. One of the things that's interesting about this is oftentimes when you read this, it is something that's used in regards to weddings, right? Right? An excellent wife who can find, right? So it starts off with this excellent wife. So this is all about her being a wife. No, it's not. There's more to it. An excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels. To whom? To whom? The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. So her value to her husband is far above jewels. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She is like merchant ships. She brings food from afar. She rises also while it is still night and gives food to her household. Her household must value her far above jewels. And portions to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. From her earnings she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. She's prepared. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor, and she stretches out her hands to the needy. They see her value far above jewels. She is not afraid of the snow for her husband, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and bless her. Her children see her value far above jewels. Her husband also, and he praises her, saying, many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the product of her hands, and let her work praise her in the gates. So certainly we see in here this idea about how she is far above the value of jewels or worth to the husband. But the children see that as well. The poor see that. The people of our own household, servants, see that. They all see the value of this woman. And I think that's something for us to consider when it comes to our mothers recognizing their worth, the value. And I'll say this as we close. Even if you had a poor mother, even if, and I don't mean financially, I mean she just wasn't very good at her job, you can say that she worked with what she had, right? That was the tools that she had in her bag. And she may have been raised by a not very good mother herself. And so she just brings with her what she was taught. So even if your mother was not someone that you looked at for wisdom and she did not display a life of righteousness, there's still value in her. In one sense, the value is she taught you what not to be. You learned what not to be from your mother. And there's value in that. Sometimes our bad example is valuable because it helps people to see that that's not the way we're supposed to be. Maybe the lack of relationship you had with your mother led you to seek out a relationship with someone who had the qualities that you longed for. Maybe you ended up with a mate who had the qualities that you desired in care and righteousness, the godly character. So I don't want to just throw this out and say, well, as long as you had a really good mother, you should see value in her. There's value even when people aren't always doing the right things. It may not be the kind of value we would like to place on something, but certainly there is some value there as well. So let's not lose sight of that. It's essential to consider the worth of your mother. She's one of the most influential people in your life. If you think back to that, in a lot of ways, we are what we are because of the mothers that we had. There's things within the way we act, the things we do, the way we think. Yeah, we have our individuality, but your mother was one of the greatest influences that you ever had because she was there in your formidable years, right? In those formidable years, she was the one teaching, guiding, so forth, implanting in your mind ideas, beliefs, and so forth. So let's remember the value of our mothers. All right, we'll go ahead and we will stop there, and we'll pick up in a little bit with the class.